Welcome to The Third Chair, a show about real people, real stories, real life. And here are your hosts for The Third Chair, Peter Grigg and Doug Bazeski.
Did you really make it a requirement for our guests to be personal trainers?
Yes, because you need to get in better shape.
Oh my goodness. Yeah, I guess I won't get that second serving of pasta. Well, our next guest is in the personal fitness training industry. He's a husband, father, personal fitness trainer, health coach, a CCAR recovery coach, and a recovery coach helps people recovering from drug and alcohol addiction. He's also contributed a chapter to a book, and he is on the professional speaking circuit. Please welcome our guest tonight, Rob Decker.
A man of many talents.
And many hats.
Yes.
Welcome to The Third Chair with our special guest, Rob Decker. Rob, thanks for being here with us.
Thanks for having me.
We so appreciate it. And as we mentioned in the intro, you wear a number of hats, including being a personal trainer. And I see you've got your Kingdom Fit Faith and Training shirt on. Tell us about that.
Kingdom Fit. So Kingdom Fit came out of wanting to bring my faith and my experiences to my own product or my own gym, right? When I first moved out here from California about 3 years ago, I was working at Lifetime Fitness, but it was already kind of pressed on my heart that I was going to go off and do my own thing. And so 8 months into that job, I was like, we're about 2 months out from having our daughter, Gianna. And this was a bold move. And one day Caleb came home, Caleb was at home, and he wanted to go play baseball with me. And I was just so exhausted from these 40-hour work weeks over at Lifetime Fitness that I looked at my wife and I said, it's time for Kingdom Fit. It's time to go do our own thing now. Because this had just started out of my garage. I'd had a bunch of equipment donated to me, and my heart was to train from my home, to raise my family, to be close to them, and to be able to do things my way with all my experiences and education. And so my son looks at me and he's like, Dad, I want to go play baseball, but like a 3-year-old would, or a 2-year-old would say it. And I just remember being so exhausted, and I just told my wife, I said, this is it. I'm done with Lifetime Fitness, and it's time to start Kingdom Fit. And so put in my 2-week notice the next day, and Kingdom Fit was a go.
So this wasn't a knock on Lifetime Fitness. This was, man, I'm reaching my potential, my dream, time to do this for my family kind of a thing.
Yeah, well, the truth was I've been a trainer for almost all my life, and eventually it's just like, I wanted to be my own boss and make my own money and not have to worry about this. And, you have different worries when you're on your own, different challenges. But, I just wanted my own thing, something that I could create where I didn't have to hold back from being myself and my beliefs. And there's certain things that I do within my fitness as far as like muscle pain relief and trigger point. And there's some stuff that, a normal gym may frown on because they have areas in that gym that do those kind of things and they get paid for those things. But because I had that knowledge and wisdom and experience, I could do it myself, so people could come to one place and do it.
So I'm curious because I'm picturing this, like what it would be like to be a trainer with your own gym and have a son. It's like, come on, son, we're going to teach you how to swing kettlebells today. Here's the 5-pounder, Caleb. Is there any sort of, I don't know, temptation in that direction?
He's a sponge, and he watches and he learns. And Caleb takes it upon himself to come out there and start lifting weights. He'll grab dumbbells, he'll get on the incline, he'll start pressing, he'll grab a kettlebell, and he'll start doing deadlifts. There's this thing where he puts his hands on a Bosu ball and then his feet on a slam ball, and then he wants me to put a little 5-pound weight on his back while he does push-ups on the ball. And a lot of that stuff's all learned, right? He sees me do it. He sees my friends do it. And so Caleb just wants to be one of the guys. And so, the temptation is in...
Good peer pressure.
Right. Well, it's, I think that's like the deepest form of psychological, like,
admiration, perhaps. Yeah.
Right. Well, he wants to be like dad, and as long as he's willing to take all my good habits, he can be like dad all day.
I could see how this works out. Instead of timeout, it's like drop and give me 20.
Right. Hey, Dad, check this out. I'm gonna do some burpees right now, and so it's pretty amazing.
Yeah.
And I'm a big baseball guy,
You're telling us.
And Caleb, like, he wants to play baseball, and we watch football together, and he wants to play sport, and, he's always engaged in something, and, he's like a small version of me, but a lot more responsible like my wife.
Shout out to your wife.
Both of you, right?
Shout out to your wife.
Right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. That and so you've obviously mentioned a wife and 2 kids, is that right?
Yeah, so we have Caleb, who's 4, and Gianna, who's almost 2 years old in August. She'll be 2 years old.
Right.
It's amazing, yeah, especially for a guy that just turned 43.
Oh, wow.
Not doing too bad, yeah.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And
I was 39 when my daughter was born also.
Oh, well, way to stay young. Either it aged you horribly, or it keeps you young, right? You're just
That's right. Yeah,
I've met his daughter. One is enough, yeah.
Yeah, one was enough.
Yeah. Well, kids, I mean, when you're hands-on, kids are a lot. And especially because I want my children to be very active. I believe in movement and the impact and effects that it has on the human body, and I want my kids to be super active. And so that means I got to get in there with them and do it too, and and I got to stay active and lead by example. I'm not just going to tell my kids this is what you should be doing. Mm-hmm. My son is at the point where he'll come outside, he'll be like, hey, Dad, let's go running down the street. I'm like, let's go run to the mailbox. It's like, no, we're running to the end of the street and back. And I'm like, all right. And this is after an hour workout. And I live on a cul-de-sac that has a hill. So we're running downhill, and he's turning around running right up that hill. And it's like the most, it's just astonishing to watch.
Oh, yeah. And if you can somehow bottle that energy and sell it as an energy drink.
Oh, man, that would be legit. Yeah.
I
mean, the moment he gets up in the morning to when he goes down, but Gianna's like, yeah, she's just as much energy. So, yeah.
Now, and your wife, she's in the fitness field as well, or was?
No, that's actually how we met. She was a sales rep while she was graduating college at San Jose State, and at a gym that had just opened up.
Oh, wow.
She was a soccer player.
Mm-hmm.
And so she's always been active into fitness and stuff like that. So no, she's not a personal trainer, or but she's also the controller of the things that go in the refrigerator.
Oh,
so she does all this
is that a good
stuff.
thing for you?
It's an amazing thing because I have a serious sweet tooth. So
Oh,
if it was me,
yeah.
like, honey, I brought home chocolate chip cookies and a Twix.
Yeah.
She's like, but it was kale and chicken. Like,
Yeah.
nope. Cookies and a Twix.
All right, so I'm trying to picture like dinner at your house
Oh.
around the table with your kids, and here's your 30-gram
Oh.
chicken breast, and
know?
here's your roasted asparagus, and here's your brown rice.
The thing is like, we don't have to count anything. It's just eat. I think that the food is so nutritious that it's like, eat as much as you want, right?
Now, do you work, when you talk with people about their training ideas, do you work cheat days into things, or are you more of a mind of it's better to be like 100% all the time?
I don't know if I'm really sold on the whole cheat day thing. So for me, it's like, enjoy the things that you're going to enjoy. Right? Let's be reasonable with it. Like, I don't do a complete overhaul with my clients. It's just like, let's make small changes at a time and figure out what works. And not all of us are going to look like we belong on the cover of a magazine. And that's not the goal or drive for a lot of people. It's just more of an overall healthy lifestyle. So we know that we need the nutrition because the nutrition feeds us and it helps our mind and our body. And food has an impact on the human body. Either you're feeding it for growth and recovery, or you're going to create a lot of inflammation that eventually leads to sickness. And again, like, yeah, you can eat cookies once in a while. It's like, I'm not into stripping people of stuff. I'm not into like be super strict and then have a cheat meal. If that works for you, that works for you. And if that's your modality, like, that's cool. But it's different for everybody.
Yeah,
Right?
yeah.
I just want people to still enjoy. I want them to enjoy fitness. I want them to enjoy food. I want them to enjoy life. So it doesn't mean restricting a bunch of stuff. I'm not.
Yeah, like
Well, I read an article recently, and it said basically the same thing. It said you can't cut off from all the food you love because that's going to affect your health in a different way mentally because
Stress and cortisol and
Yeah.
and the thing is a lot of times in those situations when you go back to that way of eating, like once you start going back to it, like it's like, oh, I've missed this, and then you just lose it and you just go back to that. So the guy that just lost 20 pounds now just gained 30, right? Because he restricted himself so much. And so you really want to teach human behavior versus the do's and don'ts, right? You want people to look at why they do things and address those things. And under what circumstances do you eat this way, or why you crave this or that? Like, and that's when you've spent enough time with people to kind of figure out their personalities and why they do stuff.
Yeah, that's for sure. Well, we're going to hold the discussion just for a second while we go to a break. And when we come back, maybe we will ask Rob, should people eat pasta? When we come right back. Hi, it's Peter from the set of The Third Chair. I just want to put in a good word for my good friend and owner of 9 Round Kickboxing in Colorado Springs, Melissa Lance. Her studios provide a phenomenal workout in 30 minutes. I know I've benefited from it over the last 2 years. I've lost over 30 pounds and really appreciate the encouragement, the excitement, the expertise of the trainers. It's a great workout. I encourage you to check it out. That's 9 Round Kickboxing in Colorado Springs. Live from Colorado Springs, it's Saturday morning! Welcome back to The Third Chair. I'm Peter, that's Doug, and our special guest, Rob Decker. Rob, thank you for being here.
Who, like Peter and I, likes pasta.
Yeah,
Pasta.
Yeah, pasta.
Love pasta.
I
do love
have
pasta.
to have my servings very small, though.
We should all be very mindful of our servings. That's
serving
what
size.
It's all about. It's not giving things up. It's all about serving size, knowing your limits, and being mindful.
Right, because so sometimes when I have ice cream for dessert, I have a little bowl of strawberry and a little bowl of vanilla and a little bowl of chocolate.
Five servings you should have of
A
whatever.
little squirt of caramel, a little squirt of marshmallow,
And then a whole lot of heartburn.
and then after that I drink a protein shake so I don't feel guilty.
Well, there's protein in the milk and the ice cream, right?
Yeah, exactly.
for sure.
All right, well, Doug is going to kick off this segment.
So you didn't have the easiest of childhoods, I understand.
No, not at all. Yeah, my childhood was rough. When I was, funny story, when my mom, when I was sent to kindergarten for my first day of school, my mom gets a phone call at the end of the day, and she's like, your son was walking home and jumped on the hood of someone's car, on the top and then on the trunk. I'm like, so that was an indicator that something was wrong, right? There's something wrong with this kid, right? So whatever I was exposed to pre-jumping on someone's car was an issue. But at the end of kindergarten that year, I came home with a diploma, and it had my dad's last name on it. And I found out that that wasn't my biological father. My dad had to tell me that he wasn't my real dad, that he wasn't my biological dad. And I think for me, that was a huge shift from what I can remember. So the jumping on the car story was a story my mom told me, obviously, of a troubled kid, right? But what I do remember was being told that my sister wasn't my full sister, my dad wasn't my biological dad. And so, here comes the black sheep, right? I'm set apart from everyone. I'm different. And through my childhood years, I witnessed the drugs, the alcohol, the physical, emotional abuse in my house. The cops constantly coming over, arresting my dad's issue with authority. And eventually by the time...
This was your stepfather?
Yeah, but he was dad, right?
Yeah,
because he raised me since I was 6 months old. So, to this day, I've met my biological father, and he's my biological father, right? My dad is my dad. My dad raised me. He still fed me. He put a roof over my head.
Even though he had all these troubles when you were seeing...
But both of my parents had troubles. And I think that was part of it, was that you had... my dad married my mom because he got her pregnant. And so the traditional thinking was, well, now you have to marry that woman. Well,
yeah, in those days, it was a lot of people thought that.
Which was the 70s, guys. 43. So, so my dad married my mom, and it was just two people that, they just were brought up different and had different understandings. And my dad was a military guy, while my mom was the oldest of 5 kids, and she was raped and beaten and ran away from home, and she got pregnant with me and kept me because she wanted someone to love and someone to love her back, and then she gets pregnant with my sister, with my dad, and and then so, all my childhood, I'm watching my sister get treated differently. At least that was my perception, right? Because I'm different, because that's not my dad.
Because, he's not,
Right? And I'm just witnessing all this stuff. And so by the time I was 14 or 15, I was sleeping around. I was drinking alcohol, eventually got introduced to marijuana. And that was my life. Like, the moment that I got introduced to drugs and alcohol, it was kind of an escape for me. And even when I tell my story now about addiction and stuff, it's like, I found medication. I was able to medicate myself for some time. So my addictions and my Band-Aids started at a pretty young age. And so, I had an extremely challenging childhood, but I'm very grateful for it. I lived in a very diverse neighborhood. No one cared about the color of your skin, man. Where I was from, we were all suffering the same.
Dad in the military at this time? Or?
No, I think when I was young, he was like in the reserves. He was a Marine.
Oh, reserve in the Marine.
Yeah, he was a Marine. So my dad was a Marine, and he ran the house like the Marines too, which was hard. Okay. So I would wake up in the morning to my dad blowing a whistle, and he'd be like, "It's time to get up. It's time to get up. It's time to get up in the morning."
Well, at least he's saying.
Right? He'd blow his whistle, and then he'd take me down to the school, and I would do, jumping jacks, pull-ups, push-ups, and I'd go running on the track, right? It's funny, I'm a fitness guy now.
Did you enjoy that somewhat? At least the running and the stuff, or because you were forced to do it, it was something you fought against?
Well, I did it because I listened to my dad. I had this real healthy fear of the guy, right? So, you're not going to stay in bed. You're not staying in bed. There's no sleeping in my house. But, I was a baseball guy, and I loved baseball, and I played baseball. And so that was my thing. Like, that was my ultimate, love was baseball. Baseball was my first love. But even with baseball, it got held over my head a lot. There were times where
you can't play if you don't do this.
But and the challenge there was too is I would make these deals about well, if you did this and you did that, well, you get to do this and you get to do that. Well, every time I did this and that, it wasn't good enough, and so it got taken away. So no matter what I did at life, and even if I was really good at it and executed it well, it was taken away, or there was a reason that I don't get the reward that I was chasing. And that does a number, because why do I want to pursue anything in this life if every time I go to pursue it, and even if I'm good at it and I do well at it, it just gets taken away anyway.
Not a good life lesson to learn.
So
No.
how long did you play baseball? I mean, did you
Up
play
until
it
I was
as-
about 17, and it was my best friend's dad who was just like, well, let's get this kid off the streets, let's get this kid into a good environment, you know, and he picked me up on a couple of his baseball teams and made sure I played with my best friend. And you know, I had people that got involved and tried to help me out, but the drugs, the alcohol, the violence,
That was
the
an
trouble,
easier.
it was just what I knew. It was so easy. It was easy to get in trouble. It was easy to run the streets. It was easy to drink and use. It was just, and plus
you
it was
figure
self-sabotage.
you're going to be punished anyway, right? So-
Always. I was always. I mean, there was times in my life, like I remember the first time I did time in juvenile hall, it was for a crime I didn't even commit. You know, I got in trouble for armed robbery as a kid when my buddy maced a store clerk. I just happened to be in the store and they accused me of stealing something when the kid maced the clerk, which became armed robbery, right? And it's not something I did, but those were the kind of things that would happen to me. And I wasn't putting myself in the best situations, but like those are the things that would happen to me all the time. You know, I mean, I remember my dad was like, hey, if you get an A in your math class, I'll give you $200. We signed a note and everything, you know. And when I, at the end of the, you know, the semester or whatever, bring home my report card, I have an A, right? Well, that's not an A plus. So you're not getting that $200. And I worked so hard for that. I got the highest score. So even in my class, I got a 102, which was the highest score. I did all the extra credit, but they weren't handing out A pluses. A was the top grade. And I tried to explain that to my dad, but those were the kind of things.
So he just probably didn't have the $200 and welched out on you, or
It's possible.
But
You know, I mean, the reality is there were a lot of, you know, they had their own drug and alcohol problems, right? Their own financial issues. And so,
Yes.
you know, that could have been a true statement. You know, there was one year we didn't even have Christmas because we weren't good enough kids to have Christmas. You know, and at the time you're broken as a kid. You're like, how am I not good? Like, every kid deserves Christmas, right? But hindsight 2020 as a grown man, I look back and I'm like, well, they had their own struggles. And maybe instead of my dad saying, we can't afford to have Christmas because that's a big pill to swallow, right? That's pride. You know,
he put
it was
the blame on you
he put the blame on us.
and your sister.
You know,
Well, you know, and there's also the old expression, hurt people.
hurt people, 100%. Well,
Yeah.
you know, my dad was a product of my grandpa raping my grandma, and he was born from that. And so I can't imagine that being stuck with him his whole life. And then, you know, how's he processing that, right? You know, what behaviors come from that? You know, we all have childhood trauma that we grew up with, at least most of us do. And a lot of our behaviors and our actions are based from those deep-rooted traumas from our life. And so you have my mom and my dad who had deep-seated traumas in their life, right? And then, you know, that got passed down to us and we were impacted by those things. And so,
Yeah.
you know, I don't hold any of that against my parents.
No,
at
that's
all.
good.
You know, like,
So, and we'll ask you this when we come right back from a break. But
yeah.
did you ever have a time where you sat down and actively forgave your parents?
I love that.
When we come right back.
I love that. That's a great one, actually.
We'll get back to our guest in just a moment. But
Do you have a story to tell?
would you, yes you, like to be a guest on The Third Chair?
Send us an email and tell us about yourself and your story.
And please follow us on social media.
Now back to the episode.
Welcome back to The Third Chair with our guest, Rob Decker. Rob, give me 5 on the high side. Yeah. Hey, so we left off with a really serious question. We know there are lots of people out there who, let's say, their parents weren't the greatest growing up. And maybe they even grew up and really hated their parents or despised them or were angry with them or other really bad adjectives. Was there a time when you actively decided that you were going to have an opinion of your parents, and how did that work? What was that all about?
So part of the story that I haven't really had an opportunity to share yet is that, you know, I attempted suicide and I jumped headfirst out of a 3-story loft window. Yesterday was actually the 14-year anniversary of it.
Congratulations for being alive.
Thank you.
Thank you, God.
Thank you, God. Thank
Yes.
you, God. He had plans. They're painful plans.
We'll
but
talk
they're
more about that as we go. Yeah.
right. But you know, after I survived all that stuff and got out of the hospital after a long stay, you know, I was staying with my mom, and I remember one day my mom walks into the front door, and I just break down in tears because in that moment I realized, well, this is my mom. You know, this is who God gave me, and this is my mom. And you know, I told my mom I loved her, and sat down with her and had like a real heart to heart. And she told me who she was and how she was raised and the things that she had been through. And then she had said the same about my dad. And at this point, they were no longer together, but she told me a little bit about both of them. And in that moment, what I realized was that my parents were just as big as a hot mess as I was. That they had their own struggles, their own traumas, their own experiences, like you name it, their own demons, their own battles. They had all those things, right? Just like me. And I just realized that I had to forgive them. I had to forgive them because they were handed stuff just like I was handed stuff. You know, my parents did the best that they knew how. And it was many years after where I was sober for some time. So first 4 years of after jumping out the window, I was still struggling with alcohol. But I remember one day, and this was like months before my dad died. My dad calls me up and talking, and he says, "Son, I don't know why you even love me. I did everything to ruin your life, and I never wanted you to be better than me."
And this was the Marine?
This is my dad, the Marine,
the
right?
Whistle-blowing...
the whistle-blowing Marine, right? Not like a whistleblower, because we know what those are.
No. More like reveille.
Yeah. Like he was a coach. He just didn't need to be coach in that moment. But your dad, not coach. But yeah. And, you know, he was sincere in that statement. And I just said, you know what, Dad? It's because I love you. He didn't know that I knew all those things about him, right? And I think it really shook his world. But he knew in that moment that he had been forgiven. I mean, my mom knows that she's been forgiven, you know. But that was great healing for me. I think that was healing for them. I think,
totally.
Oh, yeah.
you know, my dad ended up dying 2 months later of a drug overdose, you know. So he never, you know, broke the whole addiction and substance abuse thing like I had the opportunity to do, you know.
Right.
He took that stuff to the grave, but at least he knew in his final moments that his son loved him, you know, because I was able just to let it go with my parents.
Now, when you were able to do that with your parents, had you come to, some might use the term come to faith at that point, or was this before your journey with God?
Well, you know, I actually came to faith months before I jumped out of the window. But what happened is right away I walked back into my familiar zones and my familiar places and go into my regular stuff. I mean, I was praying a little bit more and reading a little bit more and attending church. But, you know, I was acclimated to a certain lifestyle, being around a certain environment.
Yeah.
And so... yeah, I mean, that's where but it really took the suicide attempt, being broken to pieces, having charges of rape and murder thrown on me, you know, the possibility of millions of dollars worth of hospital bills, and being shackled to a hospital bed before my faith was heavily activated. And even then, there was a lot of questions.
Well, it's nice to know that something activated your faith. Your list is just a little longer than other people.
Well,
I really had to shout, right?
Right, I'm just you know, jumping out of windows just to get right with God probably, you know, isn't an ideal way to go about it. But
I was trying to think if anyone in the Bible did anything like that, jumping out of a window or similar to...
I mean, you know, like Jonah, you know, I mean, God said, go there, and Jonah said,
We kept
no,
not.
yeah,
Well,
I'm
you
not
know,
doing it, and then
Who I really relate with is Joseph, though. Remember
Joseph, oh yeah,
He was accused of rape,
rape, yeah,
right?
and in jail for a while.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I was in jail, all right. It just happened to be between my ears.
Yeah,
Right?
yeah.
That
You
was-
can be in jail. You don't have to be behind bars to be in jail. Yeah,
So
yeah.
I mean, did you graduate from high school after your problems with?
no.
No.
Oh, there was no graduating from high school.
So
Yeah, I was so heavy in the drugs and the alcohol. I think I showed up for PE class. Just because I like
class.
because I like sport, right? I like sport. I like
Yeah.
being physically active was something I always enjoyed, and that was always a great outlet for me. But I didn't do well in school. I think that with everything going on in the house and all the division and the broken, high school definitely wasn't on my on the top of the list of things to do. Right? Eventually, I think I was 20 years old when I went and got my GED. So I got some form of education that had to do with high school, right? And I took courses in college and stuff, but most of my education was through certifications of things that I enjoyed to learn about. So
Sure.
Is that what
High
you did
school.
after high school time?
Fitness.
Fitness
I became a personal
fitness.
trainer. So out of all my friends, I was the guy that was always encouraging everybody to go to the gym. And so it was kind of natural for me to
But
become
you were still drinking and doing
Oh,
drugs.
dude, was I
yeah.
ever?
Yeah.
Yeah, we're going to talk about it. Yeah,
Yeah.
That's a good point, Doug.
Yeah.
Our next section is your 20s and 30s. So
Yeah.
we're gonna. You mentioned that you tried to commit suicide. That was when you were like 30, 31.
No, I was
somewhere.
29. So
29. Oh, 29. That's right.
a week after my 29th birthday.
Oh wow,
Yeah.
yeah.
You didn't think you were going to make it to 30, right?
100%. I know that we touched on it.
Yeah. So I've labeled this kind of a couple of questions. Your 20s
Mm-hmm.
was a blur.
Yes.
Tell
Yes.
us about that. If you have anything to add, I think we sort of
So
get
you know
a
what
sense.
you know what a blur is, right?
Blurry vision, a blurry memory.
A couple of highlights to
Right.
remember.
Stories my friends told me.
Yeah, it might
might
be
be
quicker
worse.
for you to tell us what you actually remember rather than what you don't.
Can I phone a friend? Can I phone 50-50?
A lifeline.
Yeah, I need a lifeline on this. With all the drugs and the alcohol, I probably went through 4 or 5 relationships, went to jail a handful of times, a couple car accidents. I just got deeper into a hole.
Wow.
I think I drank more and I used more drugs, and what happened is that everything in my life was a performance and a competition. So even when it came to drinking and using, it was always about out using or out drinking everyone else. So when I go
You're
play,
kind of competitive.
yeah, well, those are my daddy issues. those are my daddy issues. I think that being rejected at such a young age kind of pushed me into this performance mindset and getting validation from the world and from other people by performing, right? Doing well. When I played sports, I played hard. I played to win. When I drank and I partied, I partied hard. Like, it was always to try to elevate myself to a very high place. Well, I did better than that, and so a lot of that was the 20s was lots of that, of this unhealthy performance driven mindset. Even when it came to women, it was just like, at some point, it was such a blur sexually that I don't even remember the intimacy with anybody, that it was just all about the numbers.
Yeah,
it was all
yeah,
about
yeah.
being able,
Conquest and
the next morning be able to tell my buddies, like, yeah, this is what I did. Like, it was empty and pointless, but, I got that number, right?
Right.
But that's how everything was,
Oh my goodness, yeah. It's interesting. We're sort of jumping ahead, jumping back. In a sense, we talked about surviving the jump out of the window, but you were in some car accidents. Those could have killed you. You said you were in jail a few times. People die in jail all the time.
Right.
Yeah,
or they like going back.
or they like going back. I'm just thinking, it's kind of not fair to God. I mean, it sounds like he was like constantly pulling you out of the fire.
Well, so that's hindsight 2020. I think that when I really got to a place of appreciating God, I could look back on my life, and bad things happen, how many things did I get spared from?
Oh,
Or
yeah.
things I didn't get in trouble for? Or like, and I saw his grace and all that stuff.
Amazing.
Right. Well, amazing
Grace.
grace.
Thought you liked that one.
Right? So 4 years after my surviving the jump, I was still dealing with alcohol. I ended up getting behind the wheel of my girlfriend, who's now my wife's car, and crashing it and running from the scene of the crime. And long story short, I was under that house hiding and asking God to bail me out of that situation. Here, I went from a guy that was never supposed to walk again to a guy that was playing sports, working full time, getting off a disability. They said I was going to be medicated for the rest of my life, and I was getting off all the medication, my life. And I met this beautiful young woman. I mean, she's 12 years younger than me. That's awesome, right?
Uh-huh.
God's giving me my youth back. He's giving me everything, and here I am still dabbling with the alcohol and using that as a form of medication.
Sure.
Instead of just taking it to him.
Uh-huh. Mm-hmm.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
And what I realized under that house was the amount of grace that he has had on my life, and that took the desire to ever drink again away from me, because I realized to me, that's true repentance.
Mm-hmm.
Unfortunately, repentance gets a bad name for itself because you get this fire and brimstone repentance. Repentance is a change of beliefs. And what I realized in that moment was that I should have just been giving it to him the whole time instead of medicating myself.
Sure.
And that was the last time I ever went to the bottle. And that was January 8th, 8 years ago.
Wow, and I congratulate you for that.
Thank
And
you.
on that positive note,
Right, yeah,
we're
let's get
going to
positive.
go to a break. We'll be right back.
Right.
Hi, I'm Dr. Peter Grigg, a life and recovery coach with Pikes Peak Recovery Coaching. I've had the pleasure and privilege of helping people for over 25 years. I want to hear your story, support and encourage you while we partner together to help you reach your goals. I can help you. I am certain I can help you. I can be your guide, role model, resource person, and help you get results. What's my coaching frameworks? I'm an eclectic coach drawing from a variety of disciplines and frameworks with evidence-based proven methods. What would you like to work on? Some popular areas are goal setting and attainment, building and maintaining motivation, finding purpose, personal development, recovery from drug and alcohol addiction problems, health and wellness, life planning, athletic and creative artist performance enhancement, maybe something else. Just ask me. I would love to help you. You can find my services on Fiverr.com. Welcome back to the third chair with our guest, Rob Decker. Rob, thanks so much for being here. And we would just like to mention one quick thing, and that is Rob is sharing some pretty intense adult-themed content tonight, so just be aware of that. And for some people, it may be triggering, or this would be a good time to perhaps listen later if there's no small kids. But anyways, thanks, Rob, and thank you for your willingness to share not only sort of your journey into darkness, but your journey into light with us.
Yeah.
I mean, both are important. And where did we leave off?
We left off in the 20s and being a
The blur.
But there was a little light at the end. It didn't turn out to be a great or long-lasting light, but can you tell us about that?
About the light?
Yes.
What about the light?
You heard about God. You met God through this young lady.
Oh, okay. So So I did not hear about God through this young lady. She was very opposite of hearing about God.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, she
We
was.
didn't say which God.
Fair enough, buddy. Fair, yeah. Because that guy's a God too in someone's eyes, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Well played, my friend. Well, no. So when I was 29 years old, I was so far down the drug and alcohol rabbit hole. I'd lost my job. I didn't have my license. I'd recently got a DUI. I think I was just getting out of a sober living environment. I was selling drugs. I was selling human growth hormone and steroids. And, that's just where I was in life. And I went to the bank one day to cash in a check, and I was driving a girlfriend's car, right? Because this is how big of a dog I was. Like, I was seeing someone, and I went to the bank to cash a check, and I met another young lady who worked there, right? And of course, I had to get her phone number because that's what selfish, insecure little guys do, right? That think they're players and awesome, right? Such a broken little boy. But yeah, I met this young lady, and I knew right away it was a troubling situation. I just knew, but life was wild and crazy at that point. Might as well throw some more on it, right? Throw more gas on the fire. And so I started seeing this young lady, and really early on there was some signs, and things got a little aggro, and we had to stop seeing each other. It was just like it was one of the most unhealthiest relationships I'd been in.
And that for you is saying something, right?
Right. But, there was a form of stimulation there for me as well, right? I think, like in my addictions, like you think more is better, right? And that's kind of how, like, I treated relationships. If there wasn't enough drama, like it just wasn't exciting enough for me. And while we were on our breakup, she became an escort, and I found out about it. And I had just recently got saved. I was invited to this Bible study. I had nothing going on in my life. And my buddy had invited me to Bible study, and they asked if I wanted to receive Jesus Christ. And I said, sure, why not? Like, I have nothing to lose at this point in my life with all this craziness. And it was an amazing experience. We were in California. It was hot outside, and we walk into this air-conditioned room, and it's feeling great. And these guys start praying over me. And all of a sudden I start shaking, and I'm sweating in this ice cold room. And something supernatural was taking place. It was phenomenal. And the amount of peace and goodness that I felt when I walked away from that situation was amazing. But like I said earlier, I walked right back into my old ways, right? I found out this young woman was escorting. I didn't want that for her and her life. And so I got involved with her again. And the deal was that she was supposed to give up all her clients, and we were going to work out our relationship. So she was on a final hoorah in Hawaii with her client, and she was sending me pictures of black eyes, and she'd been indicating to me that she'd been taken advantage of in a very aggressive way. And when she got back, she just really wanted to work out our relationship. So when she touched down in San Jose, she came to pick me up at my buddy's house, and we headed back to her house. Before we got to her house, we bought some alcohol and started drinking. And one thing was supposed to lead to another, but in this moment of like confusion, and like I knew I shouldn't have been there, and I'd been drinking, and we'd already been in some trouble with ourselves, and it was just a uncomfortable feeling. And I went downstairs to shake off everything. I'm like, I'm going to go downstairs and rest. And all of a sudden I wake up to someone banging at the door, and it's the police. And she walks downstairs from her loft, and I asked what's going on. And she said, I called the cops, and I said that you raped me and tried to kill me. And in that moment, I was just like so over life. I was like, I got saved, but I had nothing going on in my life, and I couldn't believe that I would even be accused of something so heinous. And so that's when I decided to run headfirst out of a 3rd-story loft window closed, jumped out with all intention of snapping my neck and killing myself. Imagine if I was like the next one over. Any of them, other than that one.
Get a sense of the scale.
Oh, I know. I mean, look at that. I mean, this just looks high.
Yeah, oh my lord.
But I just remember looking at the window and just like, whew, wow. Yeah, it's crazy. I remember laying down there.
Wow.
And my foot clipped an awning, changed my fall. I broke my back, collapsed my lung, shattered my arm, and then broke my right wrist. Went to the hospital, went under surgery for 10 hours, and woke up to the police coming in and arresting me for rape and murder and shackling me to the bed. And so
When
Well, you had a
you
bad
couldn't-
back. I mean, broken back.
you
right?
couldn't move.
I couldn't go. Yeah, I mean, it was like kicking a dead horse, right? I mean, you know, and I just tried
It's just dehumanization on top of everything else.
yeah.
Yeah.
But, you know, when I was there, I remember so I had 24-hour surveillance, and one of the cops was starting to grill me pretty hard. And, you know, he told me how bad of a guy I was. And, you know, I tried to explain to him. I said, you know, I've done a lot of bad things in this life, but that's just not one of those things. If anything, I cared about that young lady, and I didn't want her living that life. And as I'm saying that, I'm breaking down crying, and the nurse had to come in to calm me down, because I guess my blood pressure couldn't come up because of the extensive surgery, and my body kept rejecting blood transfusions. So there was a whole bunch of stuff going on. And as the nurse was leaving, the young lady shows up in a disguise. She shows up, and the police officer got it right away. And he's like, "Is that who I think that is?" And I said, "Yeah, that's her." And he said, "Well, this doesn't make any sense." Right. And I mean, just a minute ago, he's like giving it to me hardcore. Like, he's basically letting me know that he's going to be pointing fingers at me in prison as like I'm sitting in my cage. Right. And he escorts her out. Last time I ever saw her, but now we're going to get more into the light, because we know you want the light.
Oh, absolutely.
Right. So
Yeah.
So I'm laying in bed, and I'm asking God, here I'm shackled. I got tubes coming out of my neck. I have all these wires coming off my chest. You know, I'm fully medicated, and, you know, I'm laying in bed, lights, doctors, intercoms, police, you know, it's chaos. And I'm asking God, I said, you know, what do we do from here? Right? What happens from here? And all of a sudden, in a moment, everything just kind of settles, lights dim, everything. Pain goes away momentarily, and I just hear this powerful, still voice. The charges will be dropped, your bills will be paid, and you will walk again.
Wow.
Yeah. Couple days pass, cops come in, take the cuffs off me, charges dropped. Surgeon comes in, says, we're going to perform another surgery. I'm able to walk. After about $2 million worth of hospital stays, physical therapy, medication, whatever comes attached to all that, right? All the titanium in my body, because I have plenty of it, right? I am half robot.
Robo trainer.
Right? You know, I make Wolverine look pretty soft, so. But I've never had to pay anything.
Wow, that's
Yeah.
amazing. What a coincidence. I mean, come on, Rob. How can this possibly make us think the existence of a God? I mean, coincidence. The charges were dropped from a lady who falsely accused you of murder.
Right.
Oh, you walk again. Come on, you really don't walk.
Walk again.
This is all done with After Effects.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that $2 million bill. You know,
Tucked away.
I see hospitals forgive people for $2 million all the time.
Right.
I don't know.
Yeah.
It's pretty
Yeah,
compelling.
they just charge Peter double.
Right.
Wow, that is what a testimony to God being with you.
Yeah, you know, and the truth is that, you know, it took those next few years for me to really develop that relationship with him and to get it. You know, there was a lot of stuff that had to be pulled out of me and taken away, and there was a lot of healing that needed to be done. And even to this day, I mean, that was 14 years ago yesterday, and he's still working on me.
All right.
You know.
Well, we're going to hold that thought for a moment, and when we come back, we're going to find out about all that rotten junk that had to go.
Yes.
I'm only
yes,
kidding.
yes,
we'll be
it was pretty
right
rotten,
back.
All right.
Welcome back to the third chair with our guest, Rob Decker. And we left on kind of a heavy note as Rob was talking about his journey towards a suicide attempt and some of the darkness he went through, and also his journey into the light and his recovery. And we will talk more about that on our next episode. But we are going to end on a little bit lighter note tonight, because we want you to know that even people that have had a lot of hard things happen to them in life can have some fun hobbies, including liking baseball.
Yes.
Baseball. Now, I don't like baseball, but Rob and Doug do, so they can talk about baseball. Yeah.
It's my guy right here.
What are you doing here? Oh man, no, I feel like I've struck out.
Just walk, buddy. Just walk.
So what's your favorite team?
Oakland A's, man.
And
Oakland A's. I grew up in the Bay Area, and I grew up with the Bash Brothers. And Ricky Henderson's the reason I wear 24 today in softball and play the outfield. Mark McGwire was just that guy, right? He was just that power guy. So
I was out in left field in the ballpark at Arlington, and he was taking batting practice.
Big Mac?
Big Mac.
Oh, yeah.
And I tell you, those balls came so fast, I wouldn't even want to try to catch them.
Well, they say that, I read a stat that his, it's about 100 miles an hour is his swing alone. So just imagine, did you see that one shot he hit off of Randy Johnson? So Randy Johnson throws like 104, right?
Right.
And then you got a guy that swings a bat at 100 miles an hour. What a rocket shot, man.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
Now, I know this is verboten to talk about, but haven't a few of these big-time hitters done a little steroid?
Yeah, so absolutely.
Little pop some testosterone.
One who didn't is pretty known is Ricky Henderson didn't. And
Ricky was that guy was and he had a career to show for that, right? Because I think what happened with McGwire is that with steroids you can get too big for your joints and your tendons, and that dude kept breaking down, right? But that was a very interesting time in baseball because at that time I was a personal trainer in Northern California, and I was actually friends with a guy who was hanging out with Bonds' personal trainer. So before all this steroid stuff came up, this dude was telling me all this stuff, and I'm like, sure, man, sure. McGwire's not on steroids, he's on Andro, right? Because that's what he's telling me he's on. But yeah, and reality is that I'm not sure steroids make someone a better baseball player or a better athlete, but it will make your hands a little bit quicker, and that The balls go a little bit farther, for sure.
Yeah, it makes
Oh,
your muscles
yeah.
a little bit bigger.
Yeah.
Wasn't Sammy Sosa also caught?
Yeah.
Yeah, a lot of those
doing-
guys in
yeah.
that
You know,
frame
what bothers me
were-
about all that stuff is that, like, McGuire and Sosa resurrect baseball.
Yeah.
Baseball was, remember, they went on
Mhm.
strike a few years before.
Yeah.
And baseball, Major League Baseball was sinking, and then all of a sudden you get the kid from the Dominican. Was he from the Dominican
Yeah.
or Cuba? And then you get
Dominican,
like
yeah.
the All-American, right?
Right.
Lumberjack, right? And these two guys,
like kid, yeah.
yeah, and they just, and then they built this bond and this relationship, and they would like, you know, they'd clap for each other, you know, and they brought baseball back to life. And so, you know, I don't think baseball should forget what they did for it. I'm not saying what they did was right or fair.
But don't you need like almost different categories to compare? Because people that were hitting using a lot of steroids probably hit a lot more home runs.
100%. I mean, there was guys
Yeah.
that weren't hitting home runs, but I think baseball, in a way, behind the scenes, was trying to create that, right? I mean, at some
Right.
point, you tighten the balls or you lower the mound, so the, you know, and you know, baseball wants to create the show because they need to keep it exciting as well. And those guys kept
And
it
they
super
probably
exciting.
have to do something again because the games are lasting longer.
Yeah.
And basically it's strikeouts and home runs now.
Have you seen all these no hitters being thrown?
Oh, yeah, because
it's insane.
because everybody's trying to hit a home run. They all have almost the same swing, so the pitcher can, if he's on, he can work around that. And
But you know, other sports are doing the same. Ice hockey changed its rules to have more scoring. Soccer even talked about making the goals bigger because 1-0 games are boring for the fans.
Well, and that's
Yeah,
all
but the-
sports, yeah.
But the baseball, the scoring isn't down, but the game is getting boring because it's a whole run. You don't see plays in the field anymore.
Right.
I mean,
Yeah, for sure.
Well, baseball's a unique. I mean, I love baseball. I think it's a great skill, and you know, I can appreciate it. I can sit there and watch almost any team play 3 hours at a time. Like, but that's just because I love the game. You know.
Well, so that this episode doesn't go 3 hours at a time, we're gonna wrap up now. And Rob, you do some speaking. What's the name of your website if people would like to book you
Yeah.
for youth groups or churches or business functions? How do they get hold of
Or
you?
even one-on-one stuff. You know, I spend a lot of time just with people one-on-one because a lot of times people just can't open up. You know, they're just
Yeah.
like, well, I'm not gonna, you know. And so robdeckerspeaks.com is my website. There's an application there that you can fill out. But I'm also on Facebook as Rob Decker and Instagram is Decker_Rob. And so, I mean, it's really easy to get a hold of me. If you look up Rob Decker, like, I think I'm one of the first names that pops up there. It's me and some dude, Rob, that takes photos. I'm not the guy that takes
You're not
photos.
a-
I'm not the photo. I'm very photogenic. I'm not the photo guy. Me and Rob, we should probably, hey, Rob Decker, if you're out there, we should connect. You know?
That's right. Well, thank you everyone for watching the episode. Don't forget to like, subscribe, hit the notification button, and share. We'll see you next week.
This has been The Third Chair. Next week, we will continue our conversation with Rob Decker. Want to be a guest? Want to sponsor our show? Send us an email. Please subscribe to our channel and follow us on social media.